Good afternoon, everyone. I welcome you all to this technical session entitled UNESCO Role and Ongoing Activities on Disaster Risk Management being organized by UNESCO. My name is Neha Midha. I am working as a program officer for Natural Science Sector with UNESCO New Delhi office. UNESCO is United Nations specialized agency with mandate in education, natural and social sciences, culture and communication and information, and thus is well placed to support its member states in addressing a range of issues including disaster risk management by working across a range of disciplines. Every year, extreme weather or geological event take lives, cause severe infrastructure damage and exacerbate the living conditions of more than million vulnerable groups. With climate change, the frequency and intensity of these events is growing, leading to even more disaster. The numbers are clear. Between 2000 and 2019, over 90% of people affected by natural hazards were affected by weather related events. The alphabet S in UNESCO stands for science, and the UNESCO is a leader in incorporating science, technology, and innovation into disaster risk reduction policies and strategies. In order to strengthen scientific capacities, UNESCO facilitates and implements technical trainings, workshop, and research activities in disaster risk reduction. These activities result in creating network of technical experts as well as in enhancing knowledge and producing materials and technologies to help decision makers and stakeholders build or strengthen their capacities in disaster risk management. In today's session, we are going to hear from UNESCO colleagues from across the world and our partners, their intervention, experience, and best of case studies on disaster risk reduction and management. These interventions include specific assessment, early warning systems, safe critical infrastructure, use of artificial intelligence, nature-based solution, and post-disaster response. In this session, example will be shown on how UNESCO intervention on DRR help build resilient communities in different regions around the world. So to share with us, we have 7 experts. To start with, it's Mr. Soichiro Yasukawa from UNESCO headquarters, Mr. Shai representing of another technology advisory group for disaster risk reduction, Mr. Samuel Patti from UNESCO Nairobi office, Mr. Sochio Tatino representing corporate from Weather News, Ms. Petra Medicine representing UNESCO chair at University of Udine, Italy, Ms. Rehma Hanifa representing You Inspire Alliance, which is a youth and young professional alliance in DRR, and Mr. Benno Bor from UNESCO New Delhi office. But before we start the discussion, I would request IT to play a recorded message from UNESCO New Delhi Director, Mr. Eric Fault.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, it is my honor to present to you the welcome remarks on behalf of UNESCO for this special session on UNESCO's role and activities on disaster risk management. Disaster, as defined by the United Nations, is a serious disruption of the functioning of a community or society which involves widespread human, material, economic, or environmental impacts that exceed the ability of the affected community to cope. Disasters, as we know, can occur in multiple forms, such as geophysical disasters, for instance, like earthquakes, landslides, tsunamis, or volcanic activities, hydrological disasters like avalanches and floods, climatological disasters like extreme temperatures, drought, and wildfires, as we often see nowadays, meteorological disasters, such as, for example, cyclones, storms, and wave surge. We can also have a mixture of them. Wildfires, for example, are often caused by dry weather conditions and careless or malicious human behavior. And then there is, of course, the unexpected sudden spread of infectious diseases, such as the COVID-19 pandemic that we're still going through right now. And our message is that it is the people who matter. And since disaster cannot often be predicted, it can hit any one of us. Therefore, for reasons of empathy, but also reasons of human survivability, we should take this issue very seriously. UNESCO supports its member states in building a global culture of disaster proactive resilience. UNESCO's interventions include specific assessments, early warning systems, and much more. What we can do includes enhancing our preparedness, as well as enhancing everybody's knowledge and skills so that we can better respond and assist the rehabilitation and reconstruction if possible. Preparedness should include everyone, women and men. And I do believe actually that via the mobilization of more women in science, engineering, and technology, we would probably be better prepared for disaster management. In any case, in this session, examples will be shown on various UNESCO interventions on disaster risk reductions, with presentations from Europe, the Arab region, Africa, and the Asia-Pacific region. I wish you a very fruitful discussion and hope it will be useful for your own disaster preparedness networking. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the overview. Uh, so I'd like to start this session with invitation to Mr. Soichiro Yashikawa. Mr. Soichiro is the for the disaster risk reduction and resilience at the section of Earth Sciences and risk reduction. He joined UNESCO in 2013 and has been in charge of has been coordinating DRR activities across different sectors in UNESCO to promote I'm sorry, I think my connection got lost. So I will continue. Before joining UNESCO, Mr. Soichiro worked at Ministry of Land, Infrastructure, Transport and Tourism and Cabinet Office of Japanese government on DRR for urban planning and international cooperation. He obtained a master degree in architecture from Kyoto University, Japan, and a master degree in public administration from Columbia University. So Mr. Soichiro will share with us UNESCO contribution to disaster risk reduction. So Mr. Soichiro, virtual stage is all yours.
Thank you very much, Neha, for your introduction. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear participants and dear colleagues, thank you very much for the opportunities to share with you what UNESCO is doing globally on disaster risk reduction. From my side, I would like to share with you what UNESCO is doing on DRR from a global perspective. So I have several slides, but before starting my presentation, I want to share with you the short video, which is around 3 minutes, about UNESCO's disaster risk reduction. I hope you can hear.
Earthquakes, tsunamis, landslides, volcanoes, floods, cyclones, droughts. These natural hazards can turn into disasters if we are not well prepared. Over the last 20 years, disasters have claimed more than 1.35 million lives and displaced around 4 billion people from their homes. Water-related disasters accounted for 90% of the most severe disasters that have occurred since 1990, while earthquakes and tsunamis caused around 60% of fatalities. UNESCO supports its member states in building more resilient societies through the implementation of international agreements, such as the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction and the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda. UNESCO's efforts in disaster risk reduction particularly contribute to its global priorities, Africa and small island developing states. Science, technology and innovation enable us to understand the risks we face and provide relevant solutions. UNESCO uses Earth observation and crowdsourced data for hazard mapping and forecasting at local level, making it publicly available. This also includes citizen science, participatory research, and local and indigenous knowledge. Technology also enables informing people in advance about an impending hazard, saving lives and reducing damages. UNESCO supports the strengthening of countries' capabilities in establishing, maintaining, and improving early warning systems on tsunamis, floods, droughts, and earthquakes. During earthquakes, collapsing structures are responsible for 80% of casualties. This is why UNESCO supports countries with better building codes and building control policies in order to ensure safer construction. School buildings are particularly important so that learning continuity is assured and children are protected from disaster risk. UNESCO supports countries securing learning facilities, developing school disaster management, and improving education for disaster risk reduction. Disasters affect culture in all its forms. This includes tangible and intangible heritage, the cultural and creative economy, and UNESCO-designated sites. However, all of these can also be used as a tool to address the underlying risk drivers and to support societies in preparing and responding to the impacts of disasters. Hazards are common in the natural world. UNESCO promotes the use of nature-based solutions, such as investing in soil and habitat restoration to reduce disaster risk and facilitate recovery. In the aftermath of a disaster, and together with other UN agencies and international partners, UNESCO assists countries in the post-disaster response by assessing damage and losses and in identifying recovery and reconstruction needs. To ensure the success of all these actions, it is key to engage every stakeholder in disaster risk reduction, creating healthy and safe communities. UNESCO promotes civil society engagement, such as youth and gender in DRR planning and implementation. With these global actions, UNESCO, through its sectors and field offices, and together with its network of partners and experts, helps societies to anticipate and cope with disasters, while contributing to the global efforts of the United Nations system to accelerate action towards reaching the Sustainable Development Goals.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. So I would like to go on to my presentations. I hope my presentations. Yes. Yes, I think this is a repetition of what it says in the video, but I just want to share with you some data because on the left side, on the bottom, we always say that weather-related hazard accounts for like a 90%, like a flood, storm, or extreme temperature. But if you look at the number of this, around 60% are by the earthquakes. So this really shows interest. This really shows how we look at the data is very important. If you see the numbers or if you see the number of this, it will be different features of disasters. So this is just a samples. Let's skip this one. Yes, in the video you see the 8 thematics that UNESCO is working on, from STI, early warning system, etc. This slide shows how this UNESCO's 8 thematics are related to the global framework, such as Sendai or SDG, etc. So if you see in the middle, you see the Sendai framework, 7 global targets, as well as 4 priority of actions, which you are very familiar with. And if you see the links between the left side, middle and the right side, you see a complicated lines, which mean that UNESCO's DRR activities are contributing to implement the Sendai Framework's 7 global targets and 4 priority actions. And as you see on the left side, yes, global targets like SDG, Paris Agreement, or urban agendas are really connected to the Sendai Framework. For example, some of the global targets in SDGs are using the same indicators of the Sendai Frameworks. So which means that UNESCO's DRR activities through asymmetrics are contributing to the Sendai Framework on DRR as well as other global frameworks which we defined in 2015 and 2016. I also like to share with you how UNESCO is working internally and with other UN organizations. As Neha mentioned, UNESCO is a specialized agency which has a mandate on science, ocean, education, communication information, culture, social human sciences. And we try to collaborate across the different domains to tackle the DRR issues. If you see the links between 8 thematic in the middle and the intersectoral links on the left, you see that we are working with different angles to work on each domains of the work. Here, UNESCO will try to have 3 approaches for disaster risk reduction. One is a multidisciplinary approach, which you see the links between different sectors. And we also try to work on the multi-hazard approach, because UNESCO works on tsunami, flood, drought, earthquake, and landslide. We try to look at the disaster risk reduction planning from a multi-hazard perspective. And lastly, we try to promote multi-stakeholder engagement. For disaster risk reduction, normally we think that this is a work by the public sectors or academics. But at the same time, we try to reach out to private sectors or civil societies such as youth or disabilities or genders, so that the DRR planning will incorporate all the voices from different stakeholders, and then it will make us easier to implement the planning. But let's look at right side, which is interagency links. UNESCO is not the only UN organizations which is working on disaster risk reduction. Under the coordination by the UN DRR, UN agencies in the domain of disaster risk reduction, we try to collaborate, we try to create synergies, we try to avoid duplications of what each agencies are doing. So we collaborate with different agencies, for example, WMO, UNOSAT, UNICEF, World Bank, UNDP, UN Environment, etc., etc. For each topic, for example, early warning system, we collaborate with WMO. On the school safety, we work with UNICEF. Nature-based solution, we work with UN Environment, etc., etc. Okay, so this is my last slide. So in headquarters, I'm a technical backstop for the project around the globe, and we have many projects around the globe. But today, we would like to invite our colleagues in the field offices as well as project partners around the globe to support UNESCO's DRR project to support the member states on planning disaster risk reduction. So today we are going to invite, so from the Arab states, yes, we invite our colleagues, and partners who is working on science and technology for disaster risk reduction. And then from Asian Pacific, okay, so Arab states, this is how to use STI for DRR. And Asian Pacific, we invite our partners who is working on the Young Professional Network, which is a risk governance multi-stakeholder engagement approach. And from Africa, we invite our partners who developed the AI chatbot for DRR in East Africa, which is also for how to use STI on DRR. And then lastly, we invite our partner within university who has developed methodologies for school building risk assessment tools, BISUS. So this falls into the school safety of our 8 thematics of what UNESCO is working on disaster risk reduction. So this is my presentation, and thank you very much. And I would like to invite my colleagues and partners to explain the details of what we have done to support the member states on disaster risk reduction. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Soichiro, for sharing. I think audience will find it quite interesting to know that how UNESCO work across different discipline, across world under different agreement, and also along with other agencies who are working in DRR and not overlapping the work. So thanks for sharing that with us, all of us. So next, now I would like to invite Mr. Shadi Abdullah. He is the Director of Research and Geologist and is holding a PhD in GIS and Remote Sensing of Natural Hazards from Paris 6 University, France. He is a postdoctoral in radar interferometry from University in USA. He's a researcher at a Lebanese National Council for Scientific Research Remote Sensing Center. He has been principal investigator on several projects related to natural disaster, water information management, modeling and decision making, assessment, monitoring and management of natural resources. He also represents chair of Arab Science and Technology Advisory Group for Disaster Risk Reduction of UNDRR and managing the editor for Lebanese Science Journal. He has authored and co-authored over 80 scientific papers in peer-reviewed international journals and conference proceedings. So Mr. Abdullah, his talk will be about partnership toward ensuring tools for multiple hazard risk management in Arab region.
Thank you, Nia, and thank you, Mr. Yasakoa, for the informative presentation. Actually, today I will be talking a little bit about our partnership as an Arab STAG and the UNESCO during the past 3 or 4 years. So my outline of the presentation, I will be talking about the Arab STAG in general, our goals, voluntary commitment, and we'll have an overview on the hazards in the region, in the Arab region, and I will be talking about our partnership between the Arab STAG and the UNESCO on the Atlas, the training of trainees, and developing a DRR curriculum for the Arab region. Of course, as you mentioned earlier, Mr. Yasakoa, there are partnerships between the different UN organizations that are working with the DRR, and part of which is the UNDRR. And we have been developed, or we have been established after the Sendai framework, and because of addressing the priorities of the 4 priorities of the Sendai framework, we were established as a regional science and technology advisory group working under the umbrella of the UNDRR, the regional office in Cairo. So we were established in 2018 and having an aims and voluntary action plan. So our aim is first to strengthen the Arab cooperation at the national and regional levels and implementing the Sendai framework of the Arab region, establishing the link with the international community in the field of science and technology to contribute to disaster risk reduction, and of course to support scientific decision making into consideration the science policy interface. We are 18 members from different part of the Arab region. Scientists with different backgrounds, with different specialities, from remote sensing, geology to even DRR in the media and in the biotechnology and in other field of expertise. Of course, we had like commitments which were on the short term and on the long term. The short term and the long term. 6 on the short term, like developing a status report on science and technology, and it will be released soon in the DRR in the Arab region. And of course, colleagues from the Unesco, they have their implementation in this status report. Organized the Arab Science Policy Dialogue focusing on DRR, and this will be held in Tunisia in next year, early next year. Engage the Arab stack with the regional stack, and this is what we are doing, engaging Arab stack with various institutes on sustainable development and DRR. And this is actually part of our engagement with the UNESCO. Develop a network of science institutes to get an extant network of the Arab stack and prepare a roster of the expertise of the DRR in the Arab region. Of course, our commitment on the long term is to engage the Arab stack with governmental to increase investment of public and private sectors, prepare sectoral guidance how to bring science and technology in the sectorial plans, and promoting DRR research and innovation inclusion in the higher education through regional related organization. And this is part of our also work that we are ongoing work with the UNESCO, the regional office in Cairo. So accordingly, in the Arab region, we have a lot of extreme events that have been prevailing, like in the last century, and we have a lot of record on them. Example, the ones of Lebanon with the floods, earthquake, in Jordan, in Tunisia, in Algeria, in North Yemen, also Cairo, different occasions in Algeria and Saudi Arabia and Sudan. The last flood you have heard in 2020, it was catastrophic in Sudan. These are some photos like the Cairo 1992 earthquake, Al Asnam earthquake in Algeria in 1980, the floods, the occasional floods that's taking place in different parts of the Arab region, especially in Baghdad. These are two different photos in 2 years difference on the marshlands in southern Iraq. Landslides, flooding. These are the flooding in Beirut, in Lebanon, sorry, in northern Lebanon, as you can see, flash floods in semi-arid areas. So we have a lot of prevailing disasters, and if we look at the trends of these others, it's increasing. We have floods, landslides, earthquakes, tsunamis, sand and dust storms, drought, wildfires, tropical cyclones, volcanic eruptions. Of course, when there are a lot of exposure and vulnerability considerably increased in the region, and this is due to the poor planned rapid urbanization growth and population growth. So we have an increase in the losses. And if you look at the statistics done for the region in the last 50 years, we can find that the number of natural disasters are increasing, okay, especially in for the floods, the storms, and the droughts. But the highest number of affected people are because of floods, and of course, the maximum is for the drought in the last 50 years. While if you look at the number of deaths, you will see that the drought has 90% of the death is due to the droughts. Floods only occupy 5%, and the earthquake is around 8%. So we have in the Arab region key challenges like assessing social factors contributing to vulnerabilities, adopting inclusive community-based DRR strategy accounting for indigenous knowledge, engaging the private sectors in understanding risk, engaging, disseminating, and sharing disaster risk information with stakeholders, including the private sector, women, youth, people with special disabilities, and of course local vulnerable communities, and also generating this aggregated risk information to inform vulnerability analysis and policy formulation. For this, and in order to assess the status of the DRR and to work on the mitigation plans and work on assessing and raising awareness, we have a lot of ongoing work with different UN agencies, with different sectors. As an Arab STAG, I'm talking, and especially with the UNESCO, the regional office. So the first achievement we have been working with, and it was like started in late 2018, early 2019, we were developing the Atlas of Natural Hazards in the Arab region, which was a tool for socio-ecological system resilience and adaptation. This atlas is the first atlas in its kind in the Arab region. And really, I was like talking to my colleague, Dr. Elsa Sattout from the Unesco, she's the responsible of of this work, and we were talking, like chatting. I said we look at it as the first, because there is a platform. It's not only the atlas; it's the platform that is behind this atlas, and I will show it in a while. I look at it as I work with the GIS and the remote sensing techniques, and when we were working on a little bit on the land cover land use, we have like a unified code for the land cover land use for the whole Europe, which is called the Foreign classification. So and they have like unified codes in order like to match the maps and match all the information together in different European country. So I look at it at the same way for the natural hazards and for the hazard mapping for the whole Arab region. So it is something basics that we have start working at, and it should be evolving and developing with the years. So this is a first step. It was a hard step to achieve, but we are there. We are on the track, and I believe we might like have a lot of information, a lot of data that will be processed there, and it will be a tool that could be utilized with for the decision makers and for the practitioners in the Arab region, and for those who need to learn more about the Arab region country. So it's basically composed of four chapters. One related to the global and regional perspective. Then we have a spotlight on the natural hazard in the Arab region, the country profile, and the natural-based approach of the natural showcase for the Arab region. As you can see here, this is the natural hazard from the global and regional context. And then we have like the flavor of the Arab region. As you can see here, this is the fragile index of the Arab region, and you can see which countries they are like. We have a high index fragility in terms of the disasters and risk. We have maps of different kinds and types for the region. As you can see here, we have for each country its own profile, where we have the population, information, economic data, the country risk profile, everything that is worth noting, and of course we are emphasizing on the fact of the ecosystem and the resilience of this ecosystem in terms of the DRR. So this is the kind of flavor of this atlas. Also, we have study cases from different and success stories on the socio-ecological systems for each and for different countries. Of course, the country profiles, we have 22 Arab countries, 15 of which we have now the profiles, and we are working on to complete the others. As I said before, the most important of this atlas is the electronic platform that you can access from the link you are seeing above. This platform contains all useful information. It has a toolbox and it has the information and the profile for each country, the related studies that have been engaged or developed in the region in terms of the disasters, the risk reduction, and everything related to the socioeconomic and environmental issues and socio-ecological, of course. So you have everything there. You can people can plot or can upload their own studies, stories, and everything. So this is the first platform, unique platform in this for the region, for the Arab region. And we are looking forward to develop more and more, to have more tools, to have more like some kind of dashboards for this platform. Another success story that we are working at, that we are trying to help and benefit from the availability of work with the Unesco is what is called the training program. It's an integrated, inclusive natural hazard risk reduction and management targeting the Arab countries. The project is being conducted under the umbrella of urgent intervention to build socio-ecological system resilience to natural hazard in the MENA region. The project aims to support the communities in urban, pre-urban, and rural areas in management and reduction of risk posed by multiple natural hazards in the region. Of course, through strengthening their capacity, providing them with relevant instruments and tools for fostering their social capital. Of course, there are a series of training of trainees that is being conducted. The first set was done in September, in September, October. The first set of 3 trainings. The aim of the first set was to enhance the understanding of emerging landscape of risk and promoting the cultural resilience for addressing multiple hazards, improving knowledge and skill of disaster risk reduction, and improving the readiness of national and local actors for active and collaborative DRR. Of course, infusing risk-informed planning and approach to enable stakeholders to better address multiple hazards, promoting ecosystem-based disaster risk reduction, and knowledge and expertise sharing on DRR risk management. So the training, the first training, it was a basic course that is designed to preliminarily introduce and orient the participants to different aspects of the science behind different natural hazards on DRR. It was conducted for 5 days, 10 hours, 6 hours of modules, and 4 hours of case studies. It embedded the introduction on DRR and the global and regional framework, the key hazard, the CBDRR, and the ECO-DRR, urban resilience, climatic change. All of these, they were tackled in the first basic course. The second course was dedicated to the policymakers, which is designed to enhance and understand the familiarization of the policymakers with the global and the regional DRR. It included the general and the regional framework, the DRR strategies, and the DRR finance. It was for 2 days, 3 hours, 2 hours of modules, and 1 hour of case study. And all of the 3 of the courses, they were done as on the Zoom link. The third course is the specialized course for the NGOs, which is designed to equip the personnel from the non-governmental sectors with the relevant strategies approach for the localized DRR. It was carried out on 3 days, 5 hours, 4 hours of modules, and 1 hour of case studies, and it included introduction to the disaster risk reduction, the phase for development, disaster management, the climatic change adaptation, stakeholder management, local capacities assessment, the gender issues, and the socioeconomic resilience. All of these, they were tackled in these training of trainees. We look at this training of trainees as a part that we can conduct for the whole Arab region. So as an Arab stack, we are looking forward in order to tune a little bit these courses to have more case studies depending on our expertise in the region, and start like delivering them each one of the member of the Arab stack in his country and in the Arab region. Last and not least, I will not take so much time. We are trying to develop a master curriculum on DRR. Okay, and should be done through the Unesco for different Arab regions. The program learning outcomes mainly will be on development of the necessary knowledge and practical skills needed to identify, critically analyze, and assess a range of natural hazards using geospatial information, develop the necessary knowledge and practical skills needed to assess exposure, vulnerability, damage, loss, and risk, and apply a range of analytical and problem-solving skills to deal with the issues in the practice and disaster risk reduction and management. Of course, this master will be like entitled or will be implemented in 2, 3, or 4 universities in the Arab region. And we are trying to get we are developing these courses, we are developing the program plan, the core requirement, and all the related issues for giving this master. And we are trying to work on it with the Unesco. So this is my last presentation. We hope that we can go furthermore and work constructively and fruitfully with the Unesco and with the other UN agencies in the DRR and the disaster risk reduction. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Abdullah, for sharing the work from Arab region and partnership with UNESCO, and especially the success story. I'm sure audience from Arab region and from other region would like to see the atlas that has been developed about how it can be used as a tool, and the different success story about 15 countries, the profile that has been generated. Thanks for sharing that. Now from Arab region, let's move to Africa, and we have a guest Mr. Samuel Patti and Mr. Socio Tartino with us. And Mr. Samuel is Program Specialist in Natural Sciences at UNESCO Regional Office for Eastern Africa, based at Nairobi, Kenya. Before joining UNESCO, he was the West Africa Regional Science Officer for CJIR-AR Research Program on Climate Change, Agriculture and Food Security, based at International Crop Research Institute for the Semi-Arid Tropic, Mali. Other professional experiences include lecturer at University of Science and Technology in Ghana, senior researcher at International Bamboo and Rattan Organization, visiting research associate at University of Guelph, Canada, visiting scientist at Manchester Metropolitan University, visiting scholar at Africa Rice Center in Benin, and international consultant for the Center for China, Africa, Agriculture and Forest Research based in China. He holds a PhD in environmental biology from University of Manchester and PhD in agroforestry from Kwan University of Science and Technology, Ghana, with expertise in science policy, climate change, agriculture development, environmental science. Along with him, there will be a joint presentation. The other colleague is Mr. Socio Tartino. He is business development, data strategy and public-private partnership section leader from Weather News. He has been working with Weather News in Japan since 2004. His 17 years of experience at Weather News has started from the President Office at Global Center, which is the headquarter, and spent most of the career in the Global Mobile Internet Broadcasting Service Division as a section leader. From 2017, he started the career in data strategy and public-private partnership section and working on business development and relationship building, especially with the international organization. Born in Tokyo, Japan, he holds a BA in psychology from California State University, USA. And they both will share with us using artificial intelligence for disaster response, a case study from Eastern Africa. So stage is all yours.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator, for the fantastic introduction. So my role here is basically to sort of highlight UNESCO's collaboration with Weather News International on this project. So back in 2019, we had started kind of in the Eastern African region, and we could see, some trends, when it comes to flash floods, cyclones, and then, a lot of, earthquakes and what we call mudslides and all that. So, and then we realized that most of the time, the technologies to respond to these disasters are very limited in this country. So the response time, if you look at the time when disasters happen, and local authorities are able to reach out to, people who are affected by these disasters, we realize that because of the time, the damages are always very big. And then also we try to see how we can link local authorities to citizens when it comes to emergency evacuations and rehabilitation of people who have been affected by disasters. So the issue of artificial intelligence, really came in, and with the support of Japan, we managed to get some funding to pilot these projects within Eastern Africa. And apart from that, we also looked at issues of policy, because the idea is to make sure that modern technologies become integral components of strategies and policies on disasters and emergency responses in the countries. And so we jointly collaborated with Weather News International in line to be able to come up with this project. So I'm going to call on Tatinos. He will give a more elaborate presentation on this project and how we've been able to intervene within the beneficiary country. So Tatinos, you can have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Samir-san. Good evening from Japan, and I'm very honored to be here, and I would like to thank you all organizations, participants, and organizers. I'm Tatino from Weather News Inc. Weather News Inc. is the private weather information service company. I just want to say our origin at the first. Our origin is the establishment of Weather News Inc. from the tragical ship accident in 1970s, and Mr. Hiro Ishibashi has established this company to save human lives and properties from the natural disasters. And I would like to cover the very briefly our background. As you know, we are in the issues of climate change, and this is the study from the CRED and the UNISDR. And I don't want to cover the detail, but the most of the natural disasters in the world is storms and flood. The huge economic impact, and this could be the key for success to reduce the risk and the damage from the natural disaster. And this is the same study from the same study, and this shows the most of the natural disasters categorized in flood and storm. And I would like to say we cannot forecast the earthquake or wildfire or a landslide or volcano, but we can do the forecast. We can expect the weather from our experience and history. And this is a co-research by UNESCO Nairobi and Weather News. And the Eastern Africa area, the Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, Rwanda, and South Sudan, there the huge flood and landslide happened occurred by the heavy rain, torrential rain, or so. That we absolutely say we can do something to support or help people in this area with our cutting edge technology and our weather forecast service. So we met UNESCO last year. Then we have developed the project to support these countries with our AI chatbot system that I will cover later. So to reduce the risks and analyzes the damages, we use the application, the smartphone application to communicate with users and organize the information from the users. Then we can reach to the people, citizens, with the fruitful, with the information from the national authorities. So, what is the AI chatbot? The firstly, I would like to explain that this is a project of from the government of Japan. So cross-ministerial strategic innovation promotion program is the very long name, but this is the adoption of the technologies and science to optimize the society. So this could be the minimize the damage from the natural disasters, and the chatbot is also the project of the Council on Artificial Intelligence for Disaster Resilience, and we develop the application with the collaboration with Line Corporation and NICT, NICT, and NIED in Japan. What is the problem in the disaster situation? So I say that's the communication between the citizens and government. So citizens wants to know how to get the detailed info, or TV's blackout, or the people cannot get the enough information from the government or any sources. So they use Twitters or SNS, and there could be the wrong information too. Also, the government wants to grasp the situation from the natural disasters, and they have to manage the phone call from the citizens. Also, they have to manage the resource to recovery and supply. So that we find out that we need to optimize the communication between the citizens and government. So what the chatbot do is to optimize the communication. I just explained, and share the information, and especially the warning and evacuation information immediately. Also, the grasp the situation from the by analyzing the information from the users, and it has to be very easy to. There are many informations on the internet, but we don't know which one is the official, or it's really hard to get from the website sometimes. So it should be the very easy tool. So the chatbot does very basic work. So pre-disaster, before the disaster, you have to check the weather information. Also, the national authorities wants to tell people about the warning, storm warning, or flood warning. And during the disaster, the people could record, also the report, the situation around the people himself, and with the GPS information. So the government could know, which part of the cities having the damage or not. And post-disaster, with those informations, government may set the some place to evacuate and get the supply, and it helps to quicker recovery from the disaster. So these are the basic function of the AI chatbot. So the chatbot answers automatically. With this function, we Weather News and UNESCO had a collaboration to have the training session with the people from Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, Rwanda, and the South Sudan. So we had several sessions, international and local training, to utilize this technology and application. So the people could touch the functions of this application. So it's very short time, but our conclusion: we need. I think the very important things to having a success in disaster risk reduction is the public-private engagement, also the partnership. But engagement is very important. In Japan, the role and the responsibilities for public sector and private sector are very clear, defined by law. And national authority, in Japan it's JMA, is doing the public weather service and the warning information as a national authorities. And we Weather News and the private sectors do the distribution of that information, also the making the values from the data or the basic services for the specific needs for the people. Then this is a kind of the optimization of role and the responsibilities, and national, the public organization do the warnings and the evacuation information, and media is distribution, and also the public sector is doing the communication between the citizens, and we can optimize it by the technology like the chatbot, and we store the data and sharing the data with the public organizations, and we can feedback on it. So this cycle may optimize the actions during the natural disaster. So I don't want to read everything, but the effective user communication with the cutting-edge technologies like the AI chatbot and the continuous training led to develop and strengthening the social resilience. And also the very important thing is the data. So observation data and warning data by held by national authorities should be sharing and utilizing with the PPP framework to enhance their new values creation and quality of weather and climate service for the people. So I would like to ask everyone of you here to, we don't, replace the works of the national government, but we can support. So the data sharing and the utilization could be the key to utilize our weather and climate service based on the PPP framework. So this is the end of the slide, and I would like to thank you again, people here. And this could be this was a very short time to explain everything our activity. So I was like, I'm really happy to keep communicating with you, and special thanks to WCTM and the UNESCO team. I was very happy to be a part of the UNESCO. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing such a fascinating case study of utilization of artificial intelligence, especially at the time of disaster, where time is the crucial part. And I completely agree with you. Data sharing is the key if we really want to see the results on the ground. Thank you. So now from Africa, let's move to Italy. And we have with us Miss Petra Medicine. Miss Petra Medicine is a researcher at Unesco Chair on Intersectoral Safety for Disaster Risk Reduction and Resilience, Sprint Lab at University of Udine, Italy, where she achieved her master's degree in civil engineering and a PhD in environmental and energy engineering science. Her research focuses on definition and application of vulnerability-based method for risk and safety analysis of public facilities, and in particular on the VISIS methodology for making technical triage with multi-hazard perspective and defining decision-making support tools. She designs and develops tools for multi-hazard safety assessment, both pre and post-event, and for supporting the knowledge transfer. And her title of her talk is Inter-Sectoral Safety for Disaster Risk Reduction and Resilience.
Thank you, and good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. I'm here on behalf of the Professor Grimatz, who cannot attend this meeting because of an obligation with the university rector, but he asked me to bring his greetings and congratulations for the initiatives. Professor Grimatz is the chair of our chair called the UNESCO Chair on Intersectoral Safety for Disaster Risk Reduction and Resilience. In this short presentation, I will sum up the main activities of our UNESCO chair in the context of disaster risk reduction, and specifically considering the efforts that our chair does with UNESCO for supporting the upgrade of school safety through projects developed all around the world. First of all, I want to introduce you the concept of intersectoral safety, where we consider a new paradigm for approaching disaster risk reduction evaluations. So moving from risk to safety assessments. So risk and safety can be considered as different sides of the same coin, where the risk assessment is connected to the evaluation of the probability of occurrence of hazardous events and the severity of the consequences. On the other side, safety can be intended as a condition in which targets that can be person or assets, so these targets are not exposed to or are protected from adverse events or agents. Therefore, the same problem related to disaster risk reduction is viewed from another perspective. We are focusing with safety on the target and looking at what could happen considering all the potential adverse events that in the small image here are represented by the various arrows. This implies that safety assessment required to consider everything that could affect the target, and this need to be done following an intersectoral approach, and from this came the name of our chair, and not focusing on a single hazard or a single event or a specific issue. At global level, we have also seen previously, disaster risk reduction is considered by many frameworks and agenda. Among them, there is our chair focuses on the 2030 agenda, the Sendai framework, and the Paris Agreement. From these frameworks, the problem of school safety emerges, and our chair developed a methodology for assessing the school safety at territorial level, considering the multitude of existing schools, with a multi-hazard perspective. This methodology we developed is called VISUS, that stands for Visual Inspections for Defining Safety Upgrading Strategies. And this methodology allows to answer to some requirements of the Sustainable Development Goals for 11, 13, and 17, as we will see in the following. School safety is also the focus of the Global Alliance for Disaster Risk Reduction and Resilience in the Education Sector, called GADRES, that defined and is still promoting the comprehensive school safety framework that bases the school safety on 3 pillars that are partially overlapping. The first is safer learning facilities. The second concerns school disaster management. And the third is about risk reduction and resilience education. The VISUS methodology I will illustrate to you focuses on existing learning facilities. The safety assessment concerns the entire school physical environment, considering the buildings where classrooms are located or where the offices of personnel is, or other facilities, for example, separated toilets, but also the schoolyard where the children go and play, as well as the location where the school is. VISUS is described in 3 volumes published by UNESCO that are called UNESCO Guidelines for Assessing Learning Facilities in the Context of Disaster Risk Reduction and Climate Change Adaptation. You can find them online. And these volumes describe why and how to apply VISUS and what are the outcomes and the procedures for its implementation. So, to answer to the why question, why apply VISUS? VISUS aims at supporting decision makers in understanding the safety situation of learning facilities, considering a large number of existing schools. So decision makers, to face the problem of the safety of the existing school, need an overview of the situation, knowing the condition in each learning facility in order to understand which school needs priority interventions and also why. In addition, for outlining a safety upgrading action plan, it is useful to know what type of intervention are needed and how much this would cost. Notably, when this information is available for planning, it's also easier to communicate the risk situation to the community and to develop an action plan that will be easily negotiated with the ministry or with the donor communities in the country. As described in the first slide, our chair applies the concept of safety, and this implies to consider all the potential events that could affect the target, that is the school. For this reason, VISUS methodology is based on a multi-hazard approach, and it considers earthquake, floods, wind, fire-related hazards, tsunami, and also the potential unsafe conditions deriving from the day-to-day use of the school, such as in the example you can see in the image here, a terrace without parapets from which the child could fall and harm themselves. Moreover, as we saw, we must consider all the potential arrows that could affect the target, as in the first slide I showed to you. So, considering the school facilities, this implies to face a multidimensional problem. So, VISUS consider all the main issues that could concern learning facilities. So, for example, the structural global behavior, as you can see in the image, the collapse, the entire collapse of the structure, but also the local behavior. So, for example, the potential collapse of some part of structural elements. Moreover, it's essential to consider also the non-structural elements that could fall and harm or kill students or persons in the school. For example, the collapse of furnitures, overturning of furnitures, the collapse of all ceilings, and so on. In addition, it's essential to consider also the functional aspects, such as the presence of overcrowded classrooms, and they could cause difficult evacuation in case of an event, or the potential presence of an egress that is potentially blocked in case of an event. As you can see in the image, there was a door behind this false ceiling that collapsed, and so children were not able to go outside the classroom. Finally, it is essential also to check the site where the school is located to ensure that it is a safe site, avoiding obviously hazardous locations. So these are the multidimensional aspects that we consider also in the methodology. So in order to assess a large number of learning facilities that are the existing schools for managing purposes, we developed VISUS taking into account the approach adopted in disaster medicine, where in disaster medicine, you know, there is the need of rapidly assessing the safety situation of a large number of patients in case of an emergency for defining the priorities and the rapid treatment routing. So this is the medical triage that is usually applied by trained nurses who are not expert physicians, but these nurses are able to substantially characterize the situation very quickly and assign a treatment routine for the patients, looking at few substantial details. We developed the VISUS methodology following a similar approach, but we considered the learning facilities instead of the patients. So instead of the nurses, in VISUS, we have the VISUS surveyors who are not engineering experts, but they are trained to substantially characterize the situation according to the rules and criteria that have been pre-codified by expert engineers. So they do the same as the nurse do for the patients, but on buildings. They use the rules and the pre-characterization pre-codified by expert engineers, and this allows to define in an automatic way the treatment required to the schools, to the patient schools that are assessed. The outcomes in VISUS, these treatments are the VISUS outcomes that are expressed through graphical indicators, and we will see this later. So another important aspect of the VISUS methodology is that, as I mentioned at the very beginning, VISUS is applied worldwide. This requires that the methodology has to be suitable for being adapted to different local characteristics. And this is one important feature of the methodology. Indeed, as you can see from the pictures derived from our past pilot projects, you can see that the methodology has been applied to different school typologies. One important aspect of the VISUS methodology is that it is founded on the knowledge transfer to local stakeholders and to local surveyors. Indeed, at the very beginning of the VISUS implementation, there is the training of the VISUS surveyors, which are usually local students or technicians, which are trained on the use of the methodology. So without going into details, since there is not enough time, VISUS surveyors are trained to visit the schools and identify the presence of substantial elements, which are the most important for assessing the situation. So they are trained to do a work that is similar to the work of the nurses during a medical triage, identify the most important elements that characterize the school. These elements are then are acquired through a survey support tool that summarizes the elements through a graphical language. And this graphical language has proven to be a very useful approach to simplify and improve the quality of the surveys. The data are collected through an application that permits to acquire both the information but also the photos of the situation to prove which were the problems, and also to use these problems to train other students in the following. And this permits to acquire these pictures and the data are all stored in the VISUS database that automatically applies the VISUS algorithms which were previously defined by the experts. And this automated elaboration using the expert algorithms allows to provide objective outcomes from the survey data. Here, I summarize you the outcomes of the VISUS methodology that can be divided in three main groups. The first group concerns the safety situation with identification of where the problems are, what the problems are, so we are referring to the multi-dimensions aspects we have seen before, and an overall judgment provided through stars where on the school, where the 3 stars mean life safety performance. Then there is a second group concerning the safety upgrading needs that suggest both how to intervene on the school in terms of a generic action such as relocation, reconstruction, retrofitting, etc. And how much this intervention will indicatively cost in terms of requirement for budget allocation. Finally, there is an indicator on status that provides a sort of quality judgments, and for this status indicator we have recently added the COVID manageability for assessing also this situation that now is important for the schools. All this information can be used by decision makers to define safety upgrading action plans on existing schools. The survey data and the outcome data are collected in the VISUS database that can be linked to the education management information system of the country. And moreover, the VISUS data are used to create individual reports for each school with very technical details on each survey and also the collection of the pictures, and the collective report that summarizes all the aspects acquired during the surveys. Moreover, the data are represented in web maps that can be queried, and there are also some statistics on the situation in order to have an overview. I'm going to conclude by saying that all these outcomes enable decision makers to develop various safety upgrading strategies on the basis of their own criteria and requests. So they can identify also multiple plans that could be compared, as you can see from this qualitative example. These plans can be compared and considering, for example, the required resources for the implementation and, I don't know, prioritization by number of occupants or physical vulnerability or exposure to a specific hazard. This is a multi-criteria planning that can potentially be implemented using the VISUS outcomes. I conclude showing you where VISUS has been implemented so far. The implementation started in 2009 in Italy, but then it was adopted by UNESCO and applied worldwide. And with the creation and the development of the VISUS guidelines, there were more than 30 institutions involved in the revision and in the improvement of the methodology. I thank you, and I just say you that I'm available for any question, but if you want also to go in depth with the VISUS methodology approach, I suggest you to visit our website where you can find more information, and the UNESCO website where you can download the UNESCO guidelines. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Petra, for sharing another case study with us, which has direct applicability on the ground, and we can see that it has been tried and tested in other region, also. So last but not the least, I would like to invite Ms. Rehma, who is representing You Inspire Alliance. Miss Rehma is 2021 winner of Win DRR Leadership Award for her work as a rising star in the field of disaster risk reduction. She works with Research Center for Geotechnology, Research Organization of Earth Sciences, National Research and Innovation Agency, previously known as Indonesia Institute of Science. Rehma founded You Inspire Indonesia in 2018 and You Inspire Alliance together with 8 countries in 2019. It is You Inspire is a youth and young professional platform on science, engineering, technology and innovation for implementation of the Sendai Framework DRR. She graduated bachelor and master from Institute of Techno Bandung, Indonesia, and received Doctor of Science from Nagoya University, Japan. She conducts several interdisciplinary research on geodesy and geomatics, earthquake, tsunami, and disaster risk reduction, engage in community service to build disaster resilience, and bridging science to action and policy. She has been appointed as a young scientist representative in the Asia Pacific Science, Technology, and Academia Advisory Group of UNDRR. So, Rehma, stage is all yours.
Thank you very much, Ms. Neha. It is such a pleasure to be invited to this important UNESCO session. And it's nice to meet you again in this forum here. I would also like to acknowledge Pak Arti Tokodiat from UNESCO Office Jakarta Asia Pacific, who has invited me and also nurture all our initiative from the beginning up to now. Also, Mr. Yasukawa Soichiro, and also my colleagues, Dr. Ifa and Ms. Nurul. So I will present on our current effort in empowering youth and young professionals in disaster risk reduction. And You Inspire Alliance, as explained, is an alliance of youth and young professionals working to support disaster risk reduction. It was initiated by 8 country chapters in 2019, and currently we are in 12 countries with close to 1,000 members and is still growing. We have a vision to have a strong coordination and collaboration platform for empowering youth and young professionals in disaster risk reduction, focusing on linking to policy at local, national, and global level. This initiative has gained strong support from Unesco Office Jakarta, and Unesco has provided key coordination opportunities that resulted in the establishment of the national chapters and regional alliance. Not only Unesco Office Jakarta, but also with Unesco Office India, Unesco Pakistan, Unesco Beijing, and Unesco headquarters, we have received some support and joint activities. This network has enabled creation of experimental spaces for collaboration in partnership with scientists, policymakers, government, private sector entities, social entrepreneurs, and civil society organizations. We work in a multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary environment as the nature of disaster, and we also supporting the Sendai framework and the SDGs, also the UN Decade for Ocean Science for Sustainable Development, and the ASEAN ATMER Development Program. So the initiative started when UNESCO Jakarta gathered 30 youth in UNESCO office back in early 2018, and then we decided to with our many of the problems that youth faces, and because we also don't have a platform that bring us together, we decided to create a platform, and we give the name of You Inspire. So it started from Indonesia, and we launched You Inspire Indonesia during the first Asia and the Pacific Regional Workshop on Youth and Young Professionals in City for DRR, hosted by UNESCO, UNDRR, TP, previous BRIN, currently BRIN, and You Inspire. So during that time, we mobilized 50 youth from 32 countries, and it inspired the other country. So in 2019, it started to also develop in Pakistan, Central Asia, Nepal, Pakistan, Philippines, India, And we showcased U-Inspire first time in GPDRR in Geneva in 2019. After that, we gather again in Jakarta office in September 2019, and we decided to make our alliance. It is signed by 8 representatives from 8 countries. Then we gather again in the second regional workshop in China, in IDMR Sichuan University. In 2020 and 2021, we had the pandemic. We didn't do the regional workshop, but instead we are doing a joint webinar and also Let's Talk DRR series based on the priority of UNESCO focus for DRR. And also in 2021, we are doing the Future Literacy Lab with UNESCO, Future Literacy Lab headquarter, Jakarta office, and also UNDRR and UNDP. And we are aiming to have the third regional workshop during back-to-back with GPDRR 2022 in Bali. So this roadmap and action plan that we developed with U-Inspire is to connect youth and young professional mainly in Asia Pacific, promoting dialogue, capacity building, and networking on DRR, promoting innovation, promoting access to DRR information, data, and technology, and monitoring and evaluation through some publications. We structure the U-Inspire Alliance having the assembly from each country chapters, and we have the secretariat led by the Secretary General. And under this secretariat, we have the working groups and task team, and it is connected with representatives from all country chapters. We have our advisory board, consists of individuals and organizations, mainly UNESCO Jakarta, UNDRR, APSTAC, and IRDR, and others. So for our connection, we are a kind of a network, and within each chapter there are also have the key partners. So we are building this network within the Asia Pacific that connect youth and young professionals and intergeneration with other prominent stakeholders in DRR. And we are also starting to start in Fiji. So in Fiji now is starting to call for youth and young professionals, and it will be linked to U-Inspire. In the promoting dialogue, UNESCO has been providing capacity building opportunities by leveraging collaboration with science sector and also the future literacy team. We are very lucky to be able to learn from various experts from the UNESCO and also from other prominent experts during the Let's Solve DRR and Future Literacy Lab DRR Future Thinking. We are also enabled to be invited in high-level meetings such as the United Nations World Tsunami Awareness Day in the last 5th November, and also United Nations high-level conference on water-related disaster and other international initiatives. UNESCO has provided a link. So this is our Future Literacy Lab that aims to leverage the collective intelligence of YYPs for DRR and resilience to 2045, and to encourage YYPs in voicing and contributing our thoughts on DRR and resilient frame at the global platform for DRR. So we started with a reflection on the past, present, and future thinking on DRR on the first webinar last June. And then we had the first lab on future of disaster risk governance, the second lab on futures of disaster knowledge, and the third lab on future of human behaviors and hazard. It teaches us on how to think about desirable future and some uncertainties, and to deal with these uncertainties and think about the underlying assumption. So it built up a skill for us to build many steps and many anticipatory and building toward the resilience in the future. UNESCO has provided opportunities to network also with emerging DRR youth network in other regions, such as with IAP, Youth Festival, Climate Action Network, and currently with Caridima. We have showcased our work in several forums in Beijing, in Ayab, in Karidima, and so forth. And also, UNESCO has introduced stakeholders from other UN agencies and organizations, inviting UNSPIRE to engage in high-level conferences and other activities. UNESCO has also welcomed UNSPIRE inputs to the documents and invited as speakers of the conferences. For example, on the guide on tsunami evacuation during COVID-19, we recently also doing the youth video competition on Tsunami Ready, and we also have several activities on Tsunami Ready in line with the UN decade to have 100% coastal community tsunami ready by 2030. So we are learning to implement assisting community to implement tsunami ready, for example, in South of Java, and also we develop the guideline on during evacuation during tsunami, developing tsunami ready board game, and also developing an animation of tsunami ready. So other than what we all gain from UNESCO, we also have our own platform for sharing. We call it a monthly sharing of Choco DRR Talk every 4th Saturday. And we also, each chapter are also doing their activities in the ground within their members, within their country chapters and members. So for example, this is some activities conducted by UNSPIRE Indonesia, UNSPIRE India, UNSPIRE Nepal, and UNSPIRE Malaysia. And basically, we divide the activities into 4 categories: on doing risk communication and community awareness, technology and innovation, working with local communities, and conducting research and dissemination. Here is we try to promote DRR access to DRR information data and technology by providing all relevant link into our website. This is still under development, but this is to help the other country chapters, students and young scholars when they want to find some information related to DRR, where they can find those kind of information. So this is all open access data that is accessible. Then we are preparing publication already published with UNESCO on the toolkit on youth and young professionals in SETI for DRR. We also contributing to the UN DRR 2020 status of science and technology. We compile 13 stories from YYPs from 8 countries, and also we have submitted 5 voluntary commitment to Sendai framework in the UN DRR platform. Each country chapters is also preparing their annual country chapter reports for feasibility abroad. So our reflection is on how to maintain the sustainable growth of the UNSPIRE network. It's still something challenging for us, how to positioning, how about the security, how about the well-being. So the sustainability growth is being one issue that we need to think carefully for moving forward. And also beyond the numbers, actually innovation from YYPs are everywhere, but we also need to incorporate how to have more genuine advocacy for socio-political changes, and how leveraging from pilot project to have a better orchestration, and also having an incubator process, investor relation, and having an entrepreneurship mindset, so to have development and also to sustain the growth. We have also published on UNSPIRE Indonesia Lesson Learned in the ARDR publication. So the enabling factors of the growth of UNSPIRE, we think, is the awareness and necessity to bridge intergeneration gaps and silos among DRR actors, and the networking of youth and young professionals with collective and shared leadership. So shared leadership is the very key for enabling factors. The organic processes that produce a right mix of maturity, the entrepreneurial mindset within SETI capabilities, and also the awareness and presence of favorable DRR ecosystem, policy process, and key actors that support. So we strategically see UNESCO that we share a common area of interest in promoting SETI, promoting risk governance, narrowing gaps of SETI in the regions, and also attaining the global framework or the global commitments. Then UNESCO has been supporting the growth of U-Inspire from the beginning until now, and we see that we need greater involvement of WWIPs within the UNESCO stakeholder engagement in the region through influence, nurturing, support, partner, implement, reach, encourage, and empower YYPs in the region. So the last slide, we see that our way forward and our hope is to scale up collaboration on joint activities in selected few key areas. First, in enhancing SETI application in DRR science policy, in DRR and science policy interface on collaborative knowledge production, and also contributing toward heritage DRR. Since UNESCO have many designated sites, this is also starting with U-Inspire Nepal that currently have an activity on cultural heritage with UNESCO, and encourage greater participation of YYPs in UNESCO input mechanism in the region. The second is capacity building of YYPs and narrowing the SETI gaps among countries in Asia Pacific. We hope to continue the annual or biannual regional workshops, and also possibly holding the youth SETI camps or the RRID competition in the near future. Then lastly, very important is to maintain the networking and partnership, enlarging the supporting network with potential donors in UNESCO network, and increase visibility of U-Inspire. Thank you very much, and we hope that we can continue our collaboration with UNESCO in many regions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Rehma, for sharing the role and different contribution of this young and youth professional network, and how bringing together youth can bring impact on the ground. Thanks for sharing that. With this last presentation, we are moving to the next section of this session, which is a question answer round, a discussion round. I would request IT if they can help me with if there is a question from audience. I don't think so. There is a question from audience. I have not received any question. So looking at the paucity of the time, I would request, I'm going to ask a question to all the speakers, and I would request if they can limit their answer to maximum 1 or 2 minutes. Yes, I've received the chat that there is no question directly from the audience. So I would like to start from Mr. Sochiro. Mr. Sochiro, as a last slide, you have shown different projects of UNESCO. Could you please share how different stakeholders, academia, government, private sector, how can they collaborate on these projects with UNESCO?
Yeah, thank you, Neha, for your questions. Yes, UNESCO, even though it's a specialized agencies of United Nations, it's not necessarily that we have a pools of experts inside UNESCO, which is why we really need to rely on the expert outside UNESCO, not only from academics, but the government or private sectors or civil societies. There are many ways collaborations, because as you see, the numbers of projects we have, of course, we have collaborators, and some of them are like very officials. We make like agreement or memorandum of understandings, but mostly we have a very light unofficial collaborations. I think starting from discussions like what kind of knowledge, what kind of ideas you have, and then we can try to make it into like a project. So firstly we can, if I think some of you in the participant, if you are interested in, please try to contact like a New Delhi office or us, like what kind of knowledge or experience you would like to share with us via UNESCO. So so sometimes like just discussions and organize some event, or make like a project proposal for fundraising, etc., etc. So it's not easy to summarize, but yes, I think first we can start from discussions each other. What kind of knowledge we can share to the world for disaster risk reduction. Thank you.
Thank you. My next question would be to Mr. Shadi Abdullah. Uh, Miss, is he with us or I don't see? Okay, we move on to Mr. Samuel. Mr. Samuel, are you with us?
You mean Samuel
Yes.
Pate?
Yes, Samuel Pati.
Okay. Okay,
Thank you.
great.
Thank you. So we have seen that different proactive approaches could reduce disaster impact. So just wanted you to share your experience that what more UNESCO can offer its member state to strengthen such approaches.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think if I take inspiration from our ongoing work on AI, I get the impression that the member states are very, very much interested, in how innovative, this project is, because you are able to, links local, citizens with, the authorities in just a matter of, a second. You send a text, you're able to report disaster information, and because of the frequently asked questions, that has been imputed into the system, you're able to get immediate answers. But the challenge now is the long-term sustenance of this innovation. We developed a prototype that we have piloted. The countries are very much interested, and we are thinking that out of the political will, of the government, they will be able to invest in developing something that is locally specific. Because of course, what we did was just a prototype to demonstrate the potential of AI in disaster response. And I think as UNESCO, what we can do to support this kind of initiatives is, contributing to resource mobilization efforts, because I realize that one of the challenges for adoption in the countries is because of the issue of funding, which is not there. The other thing is that, of course, the issue of capacity building also should continue to be an integral component of what we do, because there are a lot of innovations out there that our member states need to know of, so that it can complement already existing approaches to disaster response. So these are the two areas that I want to touch on: the resource mobilization efforts and also the issue of capacity building. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. My next question would be to Mr. Tatino. That what is the most important role of private sector, because you have experience from that sector? What's the most important role in DRR?
Okay, thank you very much. That's the very tough question to answer just one word. But we cannot build the perfect shield or shelter for each people. So the key is the action of the people. So what we can do is to share the information and the data with optimized as I optimize the information and easy to access. So the data should be open, and the knowledge should be open and shared with the people as the very easy way to access. So we can build a tool to access to the knowledge of the people to save our lives and properties in that area. So I think the public sector could support to make that platform to access the information by the people living there.
Thank you. My next question is to Ms. Petra. So in your presentation, we have seen that methodology was developed and it started from one place and it moved across to different region. How was that experience? How was that technology or methodology transfer took place?
Well, we started in Italy, in our country, so we started to develop locally, and we started also only for the seismic hazard. But after the involvement of UNESCO, we understood that safety is not only about one single hazard, but safety concerns multi-hazard, multi-dimensional aspects. For this reason, we moved and we started also to consider other hazards. So trying to have a methodology that has a similar assessment both for seismic that was very developed in the first edition, but we included also flood, wind, and so on. So we equalized the assessment for all the hazard, and we strongly developed all the methodology starting with the comparison with the medical triage. So we continued to develop the methodology, and the methodology can be still developed considering further hazards, such as we did for the COVID assessment. So this is how we developed the methodology during these years, and we will for sure continue developing it.
Yeah, thank you. So adaptation is the key.
Yes.
As per the requirement. So my last question is to Ms. Rehma. You have the experience of UN Alliance started in 2018, I believe. So in the last 3 to 4 years, according to your experience, how to actually leverage this this alliance for better DRR activities?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Neha, for the questions, and that is very important. And that is also what we are trying to think on how to leverage the Alliance for Better DRR and also how to maintain the sustainability. I think we have developed our action plan. It is an important milestone for us that we have set up our action plan to conduct from until 2030. It is the end of SFDRR agreement, and also to contribute directly to SFDRR. So the next is we want to leverage on how we can implement those activities, how we can connect the youth and young professionals within more country chapters in Asia and the Pacific. So maybe we are still very heavy in Asia, but still lacking in Pacific. So we have a very good start with Fiji, and I hope that from Fiji, step by step, we can start with other other country chapters in the Pacific region, and within other region, for example, with America, we are connected through Mr. Soichiro with Karidima, and with Africa with Ayab, and maybe we can also connect with other youth and young professionals in the European region and other America region, so we can finally be connected globally, and we can share best practices and knowledge sharing together. And also we wanted to keep promoting and also how to enable more spaces for youth and young professionals within our members and country chapters, for them to provide space for implementing their ideas, their innovation ideas to the implementation. So we are having a series of hackathon, for example, but we are still lacking on how after provided the prototypes, how to develop, maintain, and implement for a long term with the community. So that is also, we also need to find some better ways on how to really make the innovation that are plenty from the youth, but really can be implemented and can be sustained for implementing in the ground. I think when we hear that we need we have a plan for 100% coastal resilience, for example, tsunami ready, it's actually difficult to be implemented without the collective participation. And youth and young professionals can play a significant role, but we also need to ensure and to provide more space for them. So that is what we want to do, is to enable more spaces and more resource mobilization to enable the youth and professionals implement their innovation to the ground. And finally, it can connect from global agenda to the local, and from local action to the global. So I think that is one ideas on how we want to leverage. And it's important to keep the engagement, the networking, and the capacity building program for this to happen. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Nema, for sharing that. Now, I would like to hand over the virtual stage to Mr. Benno Bor, who is the program specialist with the UNESCO New Delhi office for his natural science program, for his closing remarks.
Okay, thank you very much, Neha. First of all, for excellent moderation, as usual. So I'm quite happy to see that we have a real United Nations session here. We had Cairo, Egypt, Jakarta, Indonesia, New Delhi, India, Paris, France, Nairobi, Kenya, Tokyo, Japan, and Udine from Italy with us. Yeah, just a few remarks. So the director of the UNESCO New Delhi office, he mentioned the variety of different types of disasters. Soichiro talked about the importance of science, technology, and innovation for disaster risk reduction. Then we had Shari Abdallah, who is not with us anymore, unfortunately, but his presentation, of course, was brilliant. He talked about the Atlas, and he talked about population growth, which is at my heart, and it's very, very important. Because if you take, for example, Ethiopia in the Horn of Africa, 1985, they did not even have 50 million people. Now they have 115 million people. So, of course, that affects resources, and it affects disaster risk reduction preparedness. And we have the same situation in many countries in the world, in particular in Africa, in Asia Pacific, and also in the Arab region, and also elsewhere. Rahma talked about empowering young people in disaster risk reduction. This is of immense importance. We have huge differences in the world. Some countries like Japan and China, they have an aging population. Also Germany, France, all of Western Europe, North America, they have aging populations. Whereas countries like the one that I just mentioned, Ethiopia or Iran, for example, they have very young populations. And so young people have to be one of our prime groups where they have to be empowered, and they have to have increased knowledge and skills for disaster risk reduction. Samuel and Tateno from Nairobi and Tokyo together made it very clear that most of the disasters that we are dealing with, 43% is based on floods, whereas 28% are based on storms, data from 1998 to 2017, which also tells us how important accurate scientific data are. And Petra, she told us about risk assessment versus safety, and the importance of safe facilities, school safety, and educational risk reduction. Two of the most important takeaway messages for myself, and I'm sure it's for all of us different, because we all learned so much from this session. There are opportunities for inter-regional cooperation with UNESCO and with other United Nations agencies. Two examples that I would like to mention is the example that Chadi mentioned, the Atlas for hazards that he co-produced for the Arab region. I would like to congratulate him and his co-workers for that. Another example is the VISUS that was mentioned. So, and of course, from the other speakers, there are all of them, there are opportunities for inter-regional cooperation. Maybe, so Chiro, this is something that you and I and the colleagues can discuss a little bit more in the days and weeks to come. One question that remains open is, how do we reach the general public? I don't think that was very much addressed. Something that came to my mind, points that I want to mention before I formally conclude. So let me thank Dr. Chakrabarty, the chairman of the Scientific and Technical Committee of the 5th World Congress on Disaster Management, for inviting UNESCO to organize this special session on UNESCO's role and activities on disaster risk management. Let me thank the panelists from Africa, the Arab region, Asia, and Europe for their active participation. We couldn't reach out to the Americas because they are just 12 hours on the other side of the world, so that was not really a good option. It was mentioned that a disaster is the disruption of the functioning of a community with widespread human, material, economic, or environmental impacts that exceeds the ability of the community to cope. Different types of disasters were mentioned, such as geophysical, hydrological, climatological, meteorological, and hygienic catastrophes. And maybe we should include anthropogenic disasters as well, and I'll come to that in a minute. Many disasters cannot be predicted. They hit suddenly, unexpectedly, and they can hit any one of us. So what can we do? We can prepare ourselves proactively via vulnerability assessments, training, public information, education, scientific research, and via establishing voluntary organizations like they exist in many communities. We can build our own capacities into mitigation to try and eliminate or reduce impacts of potential disasters, preparedness, planning for emergencies, including training and exercises, response to respond to emergencies better, recovery to reconstruct services and communities. We should prepare ourselves for reasons of empathy, spiritual belief, cultural togetherness, legal reasons, for our own survivability, as well as for our children and our grandchildren and their children. Capacity building should include boys and girls, women and men, and everybody else. It should include every kindergarten, school, college, university, and community. Petra, you will be happy that I mentioned that. We should not just prepare for the unknown. We should not forget that some long-term disasters are already here and they are growing in intensity, like biodiversity loss, climate change, environmental degradation, pollution, and repeat pandemics. Are we doing enough? I believe that we can do much more, as clearly presented by the panelists. And with these words, I would like to thank our audience. I would like to thank the panelists, our moderator. And with this, the session is closed and we will make the presentations available on UNESCO's websites. Thank you very much.